Hello and welcome to episode 94 of Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast that tests the limits of the friendship between two people who mistake movie taste for personal morality. I'm Nate Goss, here with Ryan Ebling. In this episode, we've invited our good friend Phil Vickers back to discuss Labyrinth, a childhood favorite of his. Directed by Jim Henson, Labyrinth holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts, just not really in mine or Ryan's. But we're glad to have Phil here to talk about his early memories of the movie and what it's like watching a childhood favorite as an adult.
Labyrinth has significantly grown in popularity since its release in 1986. Even with the powerhouse combination of George Lucas's producer, Jim Henson, and David Bowie, Labyrinth only made just under $14 million at the box office. Critics weren't impressed, often citing the lack of story to match the impressive visuals. Over the last 3 decades, though, VHS introduced more and more people to what they missed out on in 1986, giving Labyrinth a devoted fan base to the point that it is now an 80s icon.
So what makes Labyrinth such an enduring cult classic?
Is it really just David Bowie's pants? Keep listening.
Something in those pants.
Please bring him back. Please.
Sarah, go back to your room. Play with your toys and your costumes. Forget about the baby.
I can't.
I've brought you a gift.
What is it?
It's a crystal. Nothing more. But if you turn it this way and look into it, it'll show you your dreams. But this is not a gift for an ordinary girl who takes care of a screaming baby. Do you want it? Then forget the baby.
I can't. It is that I don't.
All right, that was David Bowie explaining where her brother is to Jennifer Connelly.
Sarah's
brother. Yeah, Jennifer Connelly's brother. I don't believe it was a real brother. I think they're acting.
Yeah, they're not.
It's Brian Froud's kid, Toby.
Oh.
That's his real name. And Brian Froud was one of the gentlemen who designed all of the goblins and everything
Oh, right.
for the movie. Yeah, he's also the one who designed all the Dark Crystal drawing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, Phil already
That's
bringing
Phil.
in the expertise.
Yeah, before we can even introduce him
Sorry,
again, Phil's jumping in with knowledge. She's
Well,
excited to be here. We're
yeah.
excited to have
Jumping
him.
right in, which is great.
Got to correct you before you make fools of yourselves.
It could
that
be that
wouldn't
we were
new,
joking.
but
Yeah, so, that's David Bowie offering her a gift. I would take a crystal from David Bowie.
who wouldn't? But we are doing Labyrinth. Well, actually, you know what's funny is that we're doing this movie because, Phil, you had chosen this as your movie for this new format that we are still doing, breaking new ground on the podcast.
Uh-huh.
But it's also 35th anniversary of this film.
That's true.
So very timely choice,
Yeah.
Phil. Thank you for doing that for us.
Well, I absolutely did not mean to. But I'm glad it worked out.
Oh, that humility we know and love.
Well, I had no idea as far as the actual anniversary until I probably saw a similar headline article. But yeah, no, I picked it because it was my favorite childhood movie.
Really?
And you saw it as a child.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, then why don't we kind of let's just get a kind of a baseline established here before we dig into our discussion on the rewatch here, and let's go maybe through all of us. But we're going to start with you, Phil. Like, do you have a memory of your first time watching this movie at all?
No, but I've watched it so many times as a kid. I remember my cousin was like my best friend as a kid. So my cousin Robert and I
Older or younger?
He's a year older than me.
Okay.
So he would come and stay at our house for like 2 weeks during the summer. Or I'd go stay at their house for a week or whatever. But this was one of the movies that we just watched and sang and yeah. Like I still have, I still know the lyrics to the songs. I have them memorized in my brain. So I get it. Yeah.
So and how old would you have been around this time?
Right. I mean, right when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Grade school.
Okay.
I'm not sure when, but
like around 10 years old-ish.
Yeah. And once I started watching
it,
it, I never stopped. Like it was, I just always watched it, and it was a comfort movie as I got older.
So let me ask you, because I do feel like there was a couple movies sort of its ilk in the 80s, like Princess Bride even could maybe be thrown in this, and like Neverending Story. Are you sort of a fan of that whole thing, Willow?
Yeah.
And kind of like what George Lucas and, Rob Reiner, they were kind of bringing this fantasy updated for the time fantasy element into the 80s. Is that sort of something that's in your wheelhouse, you would say?
It's my main wheelhouse. Fantasy over even science fiction.
Yeah. Okay.
And I like science fiction fine. I enjoy it, but even reading the books I read were fantasy books. And even now the books I choose to read for for fun, for just kind of candy reading is definitely like generic fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
I love the tropes. I love the worlds. It is what it is.
Yeah. Which I'm excited about because I don't think that's necessarily our wheelhouse. So I feel like you kind of bring that in to our appreciation of this movie. Yeah. So, well, what about you, Ryan? What's your experience with Labyrinth?
I mean, not as a kid at all. I think I was probably in college or after college, like real late to it. It feels like now it's pretty much, especially for people our age, it's pretty much a given that you've seen it, but it wasn't part of the zeitgeist of our childhood. So then I don't mean this as a pejorative toward the movie, but I feel like sort of like Hot Topic culture kind of brought things like Labyrinth, like these 80s kind of more like niche fantasy sort of stuff. Then it was like, oh yeah, that thing from the 80s is now on a t-shirt and now people are kind of watching it, whatever. And again, I don't mean that. It just, there was a niche audience for it that found kind of a mainstream sort of.
That kind of brought it into resurgence, I think.
Well, but do you think that because it was readily available due to streaming, I think that's probably a big part of it too.
Yeah.
Or do you think that has a lot to do with it? Because before it was like, where do you get Labyrinth? You have to go to the video store if they even have it.
I think it's a combo of like streaming, but also like just DVD online culture where people were just writing about movies that critics maybe wrote off. I feel like there was a lot of that happening in the last 10 years or so where there were movies that I think were forgotten because critics forgot them.
Yeah.
And then it took online culture, even maybe back in the day, the blogosphere, people writing about the movies that they actually loved from their childhood and said, no, I don't care what the critics think. This is a favorite movie of mine. And that kind of brought some respectability back to it, I think, At this point, it see's like you kind of have to have seen Labyrinth if you want to be a fan of the movies even.
Well, I think a lot of current makers, that's a thing. Like like the previous generation. I mean, but even look at the popular movies. The Marvel movies are the most popular movies in the world right now, probably. Yeah. I mean, just by numbers alone, right? So
globally, for sure.
So people are just more, I believe. I mean, you had Star Wars and stuff that were kind of the one-offs, but generally speaking, fantasy movies were not at the level of popularity, I think, until.
I would say probably the resurgence started with Lord of the Rings in the early 2000s, and sort of like, oh, well, you liked that. Well, you should check out Dark Crystal, and
Harry Potter helped with that too. I think Harry Potter first with the books, I think, brought some mainstream popularity to fantasy. Yeah, and then you had the movies to follow with that. So.
Well, I think what you see with those movies as well is fantasy was never able to be done well because. Yeah. How do you do the fantasy creatures and stuff? So that's why I believe Jim Henson and even George Lucas with Star Wars, they kind of had the creature, because the creature effects had to be practical. They were the guys that could do it. And that's why.
And the budget back then too.
Yeah, and even that. But now it's like you can do Lord of the Rings, you can do Harry Potter because we have the computer graphics. And you don't have to do these practical things that are so just giant in scale.
So that was when I saw it, like kind of just when it started becoming listed among the important movies. And I can't be certain about this because I wasn't a huge David Bowie fan before high school, but I do feel like Labyrinth was sort of an asterisk in his career, like almost like Prince's Batman soundtrack. It was sort of like, oh, and it was this thing he did. But then sort of like Prince's Batman soundtrack is now sort of like, actually, it's a pretty good soundtrack. That's a pretty good album. People are looking at Labyrinth and it's like, that wasn't just like a cash grab for Bowie. That was kind of a cool thing he did.
Right,
Yeah.
He was brought in pretty early.
Right. So there was just a lot of stuff about the movie that I felt like, oh, it's kind of filling in my David Bowie knowledge, my movie knowledge, my Jim Henson knowledge.
Three pillars of knowledge right there.
That's how I base all my classes. I start with those three. And then, I've seen it a couple times since.
Okay. And what did you think when you saw it the first time?
Like I was maybe missing something, I think a little bit. Like, I'm not big into camp or sort of like
fun.
I hate fun. But I still love Jim Henson and I'm still astounded by how big a world he could create.
Yeah. So for you, this was maybe more Gremlins than Muppet Christmas Carol, kind of like sort of the way you if you were to kind of compartmentalize it a little bit,
right.
Okay. And then we'll have the rewatch. We'll see if that changed at all. But my experience with this movie is an odd one. I did see it when I was but I didn't see it when I was a kid. I saw it in high school. My girlfriend at the time, this was one of her favorite movies. And she's like, "You got to watch Labyrinth." And so we watched it, but I fell asleep. And I don't think it was the movie's fault. I think I must have just been tired or whatever. But yeah, I had like zero memory of this movie, really, to the point where like if people had said, "Have you seen Labyrinth?" It was like, sort of not really. And then I never saw it again until the rewatch for this episode. Oh, wow. So I don't have much more to say beyond that.
That's amazing that happened.
Well, we lived together.
Well, that's
for
what
a
I'm
long
saying.
time.
Considering how long we've known each other, like I don't even. And then we lived together for so long. I don't know how that.
Yeah, I mean, our listeners don't really know how far back me and you go. Well, all three of us really, but like, that we had been in bands together, went to college together, we lived together for a couple of years. And yeah, so I definitely saw it like on the DVD shelf.
Yeah, it was always there.
It was always there.
My copy and Randy's. Yeah, we had multiple people that had copies.
I'm kind of like with what you were saying, Ryan. I don't really feel like this was it wasn't a part of the group I grew up with. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like it was talked about all that much unless Phil was talking about it.
And you got used to drowning that out.
I got used to drown that out.
So did you not watch it all that much, or would you just kind of throw it on when you were going to sleep or when you weren't feeling good? Like how did you watch it as you became an adult?
Yeah, it was kind of like if I was just having a lazy Saturday afternoon, mm-hmm. I'd throw it on. But it's mainly the songs. Before I knew Bowie, I knew him as the Goblin King, and I loved the music.
And I do wonder if that's part of it, because you're looking at, this was your introduction to David Bowie. Yeah. And Bowie is sort of just such a centerpiece of this movie that, like, for anyone watching it now, they're kind of going at it as, oh, it's David Bowie in this Muppet movie. Yeah. Whereas you were like, it's a Muppet movie. Who's this guy? Oh, it's David Bowie. And then that turned into maybe you exploring David Bowie a little bit more. There's going to be a difference if you're a kid approaching this than I think if you're an adult who's very aware of David Bowie and knowing everything mm-hmm. that comes with that.
I remember as a child when I was watching the movie, I wasn't aware if the Goblin King, because before they called him the Goblin King, I didn't know if he was a woman. I didn't know if he was supposed to be a woman or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because there was there was rumors that I'm sure my cousin told me, but that the Bowie character was also supposedly supposed to be a variation of Jennifer Connelly's Sarah's stepmom.
Oh,
like that's part of the kind of like Wizard of Oz of it all, where
mm-hmm.
that.
Well, we can get into this, but I was reading some stuff on this about, so this was a book.
Yeah.
Was it a book or was there a novelization?
It's kind of both.
Well, there's multiple things they did. There was the script was written first before anything. Then after there's a comic book series, Marvel put out a 3 comic series, Labyrinth series. And then there was a graphic novel sequel called Back into the Labyrinth, where Toby's an adult.
Okay.
And goes back into the labyrinth. This is kind of an interesting fact. Maurice Sendak had written a book with a similar storyline, to the point where he was good friends with Jim Henson, and better friends with Jim Henson's wife. Ex-wife at the time.
It was Outside Over There is the Sendak book.
Which is a girl whose little sister gets stolen by goblins.
Yes. Henson was always very upfront about how he owed a lot of Labyrinth to that book.
Well, after Maurice Sendak sent him a very strong worded letter.
Oh,
seriously, this really happened. He decided that he was going to put Maurice Sendak in the credits then.
Now, here's the thing though. It was by A.C.H. Smith. It was a 1986 novelization of Labyrinth.
So it's the novelization.
That was written with input from Henson and Terry Jones. And in there, it goes even deeper into that character of Jareth. And in the book, her mother is an actor, and her boyfriend is someone named Jeremy, and looks exactly like Jareth.
And she left the family for him.
She left the family. Yeah, right. Well, so now that we've kind of talked about and established, in addition to a tangent, established our first time watching this movie, do we want to kind of talk about what it was like watching it now? Now, Phil, had it been a while?
No, I mean, it's probably been a year or year and a half. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like how a lot of people have whatever movie you have from your childhood, you just haven't memorized, and this movie is very I could sing the songs back right now. I just have it memorize. It's in my brain. So when I rewatched it, it was nothing. I mean, I was just like, yeah.
Yeah, I figured your rating or whatever wouldn't change.
No.
But I just didn't know how fresh it was when you rewatched it.
I still like the visuals. I still, it's still all, but I kind of feel like I can understand the critics at the time who were like, the story is not great. Like, there's not much to it. Which the brand I have to keep up also is mentioning what Kelsey says when we watch. And she said she just doesn't really love quest stories because it's sort of just like, for her, she's just like, can I just get there? Like, she's not super in love with all the obstacles. I'm not fully there, but like, I can get it. And especially since there's the scene in the beginning where she says like, oh, that would take you straight to the castle. Maybe it's winking at the idea of like a quest movie that like, yeah, we're going to put you through this. We absolutely don't have to. But yeah, I just kind of lose interest at times, but then there are scenes that just are great.
Do we want to do a kind of a star rating? I mean, I figure it's going to be 5 stars, right? I mean,
if you can even.
No, let's be realistic about it. I'm not completely blind to it. I also understand that this movie is almost 98% nostalgia. You know what I mean? Like it's. So,
okay.
Yeah.
It's your rating.
I would give it a 4.5 stars.
Really?
Yeah.
Just go with 5, man.
Nah,
that's fine.
No, because I'm still waiting for my 5. You know what I mean?
You've never seen a 5 movie?
Well, I'm waiting. I've seen movies that were 5s right after I saw them, and then upon a week like upon a rewatch, you're like, you guys know. Yeah. But I'm realistically.
A 4.5?
Yeah, because I was also, as a kid, there were parts that I didn't like. As a kid, the ballroom scene made no sense to me. I was like, why are they dancing?
You needed Stanley Kubrick to help you out with that part.
Yeah. It was a little
Eyes Wide Shut there. Yeah.
It was just really weird, But so yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely one of my top movies.
Right. How can you rate a piece of your heart?
Yeah.
You just can't. I mean, probably like a 3 star, 3 out of 5 for me.
Okay. I'm feeling good about this movie.
Okay.
I would easily give it a 4. I really enjoyed myself with this. You can definitely see the inspirations and the pieces in there, and that it is very much just a quest movie. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm all that a huge fan of quest movies per se, but I thought it was an interesting idea to kind of take something like, say, Wizard of Oz and give it like a Monty Python sensibility to it, which bringing Terry, I could definitely see like the Terry Jones in this, in the humor of all the different stations of the quest, that awareness you're talking about, like it's very aware of what it's doing.
And did almost, you see who did the final polish of the script? No. Elaine May.
Really? How do I miss that?
I don't know.
They had multiple people touch. Even George Lucas.
You're going to 3-star something Elaine May had a part in. Are you going to really do this?
I know.
But I just thought it was a really smart movie, especially for its time, because I think since then you've seen other, like you were saying earlier, so many people have kind of taken these ideas and run with them, into even a little bit more of a, maybe we would call it a modern sensibility, whatever. But I really appreciate that it does go to those dark places.
It seems like a lot of older kids' movies, just like older folk tales, they're okay with scaring kids.
Yeah.
Like the goblins at the beginning of the movie when they're hiding and they're, that's a pretty creepy scene. That's that's almost a horror movie type scene.
In the bedroom, you mean?
Yeah, in the bedroom. And then when she's walking to the blanket and it's crawling away and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think that part of it's also just everyone's so kid gloves with kid stuff nowadays. And some kids need that. Like some kids are just more sensitive to that. But as a kid, like I said, if it was weird, if it was odd or different, then I wanted to watch it.
Right,
like it was, that's what I liked.
It's got good company with like the original Grimm's fairy tales, Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales, and it's more in line with sort of the older tradition of fairy tales and not being afraid of ambiguity and gruesomeness. And what's the point of this? Maybe there's not much of a point to it, know?
And similarly, in kind of like a middle ground, I would say to Pan's Labyrinth. Like Pan's Labyrinth, which is fully mature, as far as like they take it even a step further than Labyrinth. But I mean, they're both Labyrinth and fairy tale type.
I have written in my notes, I said before Del Toro, there was Labyrinth. Yeah. Like I could definitely see that touch in there. And Cuarón even with like what he did with the Prisoner of Azkaban.
And Neil Gaiman getting into kids' literature.
Yeah. But with that said, even 4 stars and all, enjoying myself, I do have questions where I'm just kind of like, what the hell is that about? Or like, that doesn't even make any plot sense to me. Like, why don't we just start with the basics here?
Sure.
Maybe you can answer this. Maybe there is no answer. Why did Jareth want the baby? What for?
He wanted Sarah.
He wanted her.
Oh, and also he wants Toby to be the next Goblin King. He wants to raise Toby as his successor.
Okay, then maybe that's what I missed, because I was kind of like, I don't really get the baby in this, like what the baby serves.
Yeah, if they stay there, they can't leave. They're stuck there forever. And apparently, Jareth doesn't necessarily enjoy being
the Goblin King.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily like it.
Yeah,
so
it looks like it sucks.
Yeah,
honestly,
he doesn't look that great.
Well, no, and he even says like that's kind of the shtick is he doesn't want to be in that position necessarily. But yeah, from what I gather is two things. A, eventually he falls in love with Sarah.
Yes, well, I think that's
the fantasy in her head, right?
Yeah.
And then secondly, he wants Toby to be, and that's actually the sequel graphic novel that I was telling you about. That's kind of the premise is. He talks Toby into coming back and tries to get him to be the successor.
To be the new Goblin King.
Yeah, if you will.
So, rewatching it, are there things like, as an adult, you appreciate now that you didn't when you watched it as a kid?
I think just the practical effects even more so. Because I've also done a lot of like, I've watched a lot of documentaries on this movie. Mm-hmm. I've read a lot of like Jim Henson biographies and stuff. So I just know that the work that they put into this and the scope of a lot of what they did, and even just how they shot the movie, because this was the first Jim Henson project where Jim Henson didn't puppeteer anything.
Oh, he didn't?
No, he just directed. Brian was old enough, his son, to where Brian even voices Hoggle.
Right.
He's one of the main puppeteers on Hoggle's head. Hoggle the dwarf, if you will.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, like I said, this is the first time they did a lot of certain things. Like it was one of the first computer graphic animals.
Right.
Yeah.
Like even tried in a movie. And that was kind of the Henson Company's thing. Jim was always a big on what's the newest way we can create creatures.
Yeah.
And that's why they really went into that.
That's the scene where it's the creatures that are kind of throwing each other's heads around. That one?
No, that's
opening.
the Fireys.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the owl
opening.
at the beginning.
Oh, the owl, yes.
The opening
okay.
credits.
Yeah. The Fireys, that's what they're called. They're four puppeteers. They were reaching their hands with the puppet parts through black curtains. And then they superimposed on top of the black curtain the video of the actual like wood background and whatnot.
Like the man said, don't lose your head.
And then also the music. I still love the music, and I appreciate the slower stuff now as an older guy. But that's those two things.
Yeah, not just the impressiveness of the practical effects, but the cleverness of how to use them. Because yes, they can make an awesome puppet. Ludo is incredible, but one scene that really stood out to me was the hands scene, where like so many just different faces out of hands. Like every face looks
very
different,
cool. Yeah.
Which is like, it doesn't sound that impressive, but it's like, man, that's so clever to come up with that idea and to come up with different personalities for faces made out of hands.
I think it's the imaginative nature of it that I miss, because nowadays, and this isn't just like a let's rag on CGI.
Let's.
But maybe we should, because I do feel like there's something just magically gone in it. And it's not just, well, now you can just do anything. It's that there is genuinely some kind of touch to puppetry that I think actually makes things funnier. It is funnier when a puppet does something than when a CGI animation of the same thing does the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And you could animate it with all sorts of facial expressions to try to make it funnier. Mm-hmm. But there's something funny about the limitations of a puppet, I think. But then also being impressed by what they're doing given those limitations. Like you're taking all of that in you, in your psyche when you're watching this, I think. And actually, we grew up in a time where, I can remember being blown away by computer effects.
Yeah, that look horrible now.
Yeah. So now it's almost like I go back, because now we're just kind of tired of computer effects. Yeah. They've done everything. We've seen everything. It's just numbing at this point.
Yeah.
And then you go back to something like Labyrinth and you're like, this seems like a little more timeless.
Yeah. And I think in some ways people are kind of returning to that a little bit, and not obviously studios, it's going to be way cheaper for them to just do computer graphics. So they're going to do that. But like in The Mandalorian, Grogu, Baby Yoda, was originally, the puppet was just going to be a stand-in until they computer animated him. And then Werner Herzog said, "Don't be a coward." He said, "Stick with the puppet," and they just stuck with the puppet, and it's great. It's so much better.
And look at how that became such a meme of Baby Yoda. And I could it have ever turned into that if it was just a computer generated thing?
It's a cultural obsession.
Yeah.
I also think just on a human brain level, your brain, we're not to the point. I mean, we're getting there, but we're not to the point yet where computer graphics are. They're not fooling our subconscious on any level yet.
Right.
I mean, we're getting there. Stuff doesn't look like the Polar Express anymore, where you have like every character's Botoxed. But I'm saying I think that's part of it. Is our brain also appreciates, like, especially when it's a weird creature, when there's actual substance to it.
Absolutely. There's also the just base level when you're a kid with a sock puppet, how funny it is to just take it off your hand and throw it and go, "Ma!" and just seeing how, that's funny. That's always going to be funny. It does hit at this like core childishness of play, I think, when you see some of the stuff in Labyrinth. And then you see that mixed with the more higher level Terry Jones humor of like the funniness to me of Ludo just constantly saying that smell in the eternal
bog of eternal stench.
Bog of eternal stench. It's just this like smell. It does it like 5 times. Like he just can't get with the fart noises, of course, in the background.
Yeah,
you
but
can't beat that.
Just constant.
The bog of
farting.
eternal stench is gross, man.
It is.
The effects are just really gross.
They're so sick.
It's so funny though.
What is it?
The bog of eternal stench.
There was a lot of intent. I mean, Jim Henson was an obsessive worker. And then you had Brian Froud. There is a book. Every single puppet you see in Labyrinth has a name and a backstory. Mm-hmm. Brian Froud there's even a book called
He and Terry Jones wrote it.
So, I mean, the intent is there. So like, and not only that, they tried to make the set fun. Like when the extras are there during the magic dance scene and they have like all the goblins moving and dancing, the only direction they gave them was act like goblins. So you have all the actors that were in those, it's part puppetry, part actors, but yeah, they were just acting like idiots because that's what they were told to do. So I mean, a lot of that's fun,
but that's fun. And that's lively.
And that scene just logistically is so impressive because so much of the other Muppet stuff is shot from like waist up of the humans and like you didn't never see the floor because but that one they're kind of showing off. Like the camera's up in the air. It's like, look, they're on the floor.
Yeah.
And they're on the walls. Yeah. They said if you remove the puppets from that scene, it looked like absolute Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
Because they had,
because there's like 50 some puppets, right?
Yeah. And then they had people, they just threw them on strings or on ropes. And they're like, we're just going to pull you up in the air.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, like that's what I think that's the thing that a lot of like when we talk about like modern movies, it's such a machine now.
Yeah.
Whereas that was more of an organic situation where, okay, this is the problem. We're going to try to figure out how to do this like this. And then they creatively come up with a way to do it. Like that's why you get kind of, I think, an organic feel.
Yeah. And does that sort of creative culture exist anymore? It reminds me of a documentary that you recommended on our Hoopla Canopy.
Oh, yeah.
Beauty is Embarrassing.
Yeah.
Where Wayne White was a production designer and puppet designer on Pee-wee's Playhouse. And they created entire alternate shows in their quote-unquote downtime. Like, they just had time to sit around and make puppets and do voices and create characters and create sets. And some of that made it onto the show. Some like stuff would bleed into that, but they also were just kind of filming that stuff. And there were just these people who were just incredibly creative people, incredibly good at creating things and crafting lots of different stuff. They were clever and they had downtime to do that. I just feel like with CGI, and I have no idea, like I have no idea what it's like, but it just feels like you would never have that.
I think that there are probably creative people that are just as creative at problem solving and stuff. I think for me, it's more a matter of the collection of the creative giants, between just Froud's graphic mind, Henson's puppetry mind, and then Jones as far as like script and production wise. Like they just did such a good job as far as like all of them together.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have worked if any of those personalities were not involved.
I don't think a Labyrinth organically happens these days. And maybe you can speak to this, as I don't know how much of this, because we've talked a lot about sort of the collaborative effort of all this, but how much of this really was like Jim Henson's pet project?
It was, if anything, it was Henson and Froud's project with Jones. And then, this was never just Jim. Jim Henson didn't like to do that. He liked to work with people.
So at the end of the day, the story still has to kind of glue together. And so I guess, is that maybe where you start to wander a little bit, Ryan? The story is not doing it for me. You know? Or is it like, I don't know, like for me, the character of Sarah as Jennifer Connelly is pretty flat. For someone who has to carry the movie, she is no Judy Garland. I'll put it that way.
Well, and she's made to just stand and look around a lot. But not be amazed. So like you are scared of this, but it's also supposed to be kind of fun for us as the audience, but not fun for her as a character. So I feel like there's sort of like an audience disconnect with her when the Fireys are having this fun song. For us as an audience, it's like, oh, awesome. For her as a character, it's like, yeah, they're going to
super scary.
Kill me.
Yeah.
And there's just a real disconnect there. And then to kind of jump back into Sarah's shoes immediately following that scene, it's just sort of like, oh, okay. This is not as interesting as that song was, but I was asked to like disassociate from you for a little bit there, or I kind of did, you know?
Yeah.
That's partly it for me. I feel like Jennifer Connelly was given a pretty hard job.
No, she's also 14.
Right.
I think we're so used to seeing in a lot of situations, child actors that are
older than the character they're playing.
Well, first off, that nowadays they're 25 if they're playing a teenager, but I mean, even child actors that are like
really
Broadway, very, hey. So I think she just plays up more. And I'm kind of like, well, maybe she's reacting like a normal 14-year-old person would, especially because, I mean, what do you do when you're kind of plopped into set pieces?
But it's also, I don't know how to reconcile the character she is with her parents with the character she is in the Labyrinth, right? Like she's super dramatic, super over the top. Like I'm kind of like, her parents are really reasonable people. Like they want to go out on a date. He's already going to be in bed. She just has to be home. And she's like, you're ruining my life, which is very like, fine. I don't have a problem with that.
That's teen behavior.
It's just sort of like, I just don't get a real sense of who she is as a character.
Because she's so dramatic there.
Yeah.
And then you throw her into a situation where you should really be acting dramatic right now. It's just like she's just kind of looking around.
Yeah, right.
Well, but we always act craziest around our family.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean,
she was just trying to be cool around the Goblin King.
Well, you can.
Yeah, whatever, my brother. Yeah. But otherwise, the story is, I mean, it's pretty standard fare, right?
It's children's
fantasy.
Fare.
Yeah. You can't scrutinize it too strongly. I think.
But were you? But
I can't.
But was it enough to string you along? I guess is because it seems like maybe you were losing it a little bit.
Yeah,
or
I
just,
do lose it a little bit.
Yeah.
Hoggle's flip-floppery gets a little tedious. It's tough because you don't want it to just be like this short movie, but it also felt like they were padding some of this a little bit maybe. And I wonder how much of that was lost because the script, anytime a script goes through that many people's hands, there's going to be something lost. I feel like there were some things missing, like some elements of it that just kind of got lost in that whole shuffle.
Did it feel a little anticlimactic at the on the rewatch at all? Like watching it not as a kid, kind of like the big thing at the end. It's a bunch of rocks rolling around.
That big thing. That's right. Yeah, I'm definitely like, I don't remember that. I don't remember what was going on there.
Bluto's friends with rocks.
Of course, I get that.
Right.
I get that, but
I loved it. I thought that as a kid,
I'm fine with that being a thing. But that whole scene,
I just thought that was funny as a kid.
Yeah,
it's just rocks chasing the goblins around. That's funny to me. It's just slapstick.
It is.
Oh, sure. I guess to me it was just like, but this is the big fight. And then you get the final meetup with Jareth, with Bowie, and I kind of like the general idea of it, of her being able to basically say, you don't have any power over me.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, that part almost seemed rushed. Like it was kind of like all of a sudden she's in the room with him and she just says this line and it's over.
Damn. I can never remember
Just fear me, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave.
My kingdom is great. You have no power over me. You have no power over me.
But that's, I guess every movie like this, where it's a Wizard of Ozzy type, there's a moment where they snap awake and they're like, oh,
yeah,
of course, yeah.
Wizard of Oz. Like, wait, she just clicks her heels together.
Yeah, what an
that's
idiot.
true.
I'm not like faulting it for that stuff because that's just sort of movie stuff. But I will say that I'm like, I do not remember why the Goblin Army was in the Goblin City with them and chasing them, and it's just
just where they live, bro. That's where goblins live.
I guess so.
The Goblin City.
In the Goblin. Okay, I didn't put that together, and that makes sense.
Those are goblin houses. And they're like, who are these people?
Yeah.
We don't want you in our neighborhood.
Oh, man. And I wonder if, like, you don't have any power over me is, like, if you're thinking about it with, like, the novelization and, like, what she felt about her mom leaving and the man who took her mom from her, if there's sort of, like, she's processing also, like, her grief there, the anger that she feels towards her mom and towards her new family. And she's sort of saying, like, oh, wait.
This
you
stuff
don't
has
have
no
that.
point,
Yeah. Like the stuff that Agnes, you learn her name is in the extra books.
The old
was
lady
trying to like
with
pile on.
Don't talk nonsense. It's all here. Everything in the world you've ever cared about is all right here. Look, here's your little toy candy shop.
Dangers untold and hardships unnumbered. I fought my way here to the castle, beyond the Goblin City, to take back the child that you have stolen.
What's the matter, my dear? Don't you like your toys?
It's all junk.
Well, what about this? This is not junk. Eh?
Yes, it is!
That stuff weighing you down, like this isn't meaningless or this is meaningful, and like or this is meaningless, and just sort of her sorting through, like, oh, what is shaping me as a person, and my reaction to people.
And I appreciate that sort of thematic direction it sort of has, because there's sort of the simplicity of she just wants to get Toby back, and it's almost like she realizes near the end that wasn't really what Jareth had in mind. Like, he wanted her. And that's like put upon her. And that is empowering to just be able to say, like, you don't have any power over me. Give me back the damn kid,
Well, in the comic.
Because it's like, I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. I did say I wanted my brother to be taken away. That I did say, I'll give you that, Jareth.
But I did not mean you could seduce me at a masquerade ball.
Well, in the comic, the Jareth character actually tries to kiss her. She runs away from him. But like that, so that they even later enforce that more so that like he was trying to date her or whatever, or whatever.
I think that's in the movie though. I mean, we got the ballroom scene is odd.
No, it is,
and there's a lot going on there.
And as a kid, I had no idea.
Exactly.
Like I said, it was just weird to me.
It's very weird.
So we've mentioned the music in passing. You've mentioned, Phil, how much the music is a big part of your enjoyment of this. Let's just talk more about that. Did you have a favorite song when you were a kid?
Dance Magic Dance.
Yeah,
that's everybody's favorite song.
Had gone and left my baby blue. Nobody knew what kind of magic spell to use.
Slime and snails, or puppy dog's tail, thunder or light.
And baby said,
Dance, magic, dance, dance, magic, dance.
Yeah, that was the best. I mean, to the point where if there's people that have seen it and you just say, you remind me of the Babe, like that whole first little, you remind me of the Babe. What Babe? The Babe with the power. What power? The power of voodoo. Who do you do what? Remind me of the Babe. That's the best That scene is like that's the first thing I memorized from the movie. And my cousin would do that. We'd do that scene back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then you can sing the whole song, which is just a great David Bowie song.
It is.
Once the intro's done.
Yeah, and this was right around the Let's Dance David Bowie, right?
Yeah.
And that feels very much like that could Magic Dance could be on the Let's Dance.
It was one of the singles. Yeah,
Was
there was 2 singles released from this movie, and Dance Magic Dance was one.
Was it Underground? So the 2 were
Underground and Dance Magic Dance.
Magic Dance, yeah.
Or just Magic Dance.
Yeah.
But
Magic Dance.
Yeah, but so I appreciate it. I mean, I believe that even the like not just the soundtrack, but the score, which is super synthy, but the theme is recognizable throughout the movie, whether or not you remember it now. But they made it very pronounced, and I don't know. I think it's a good score as well, not just the singles.
Yeah, I think I have to go back and just listen to the album or the score because it's not terribly memorable to me. I mean, I would consider myself an average Bowie fan. Like I've gotten into quite a few of his records, definitely a couple greatest hits collections, and none of these songs from the movie struck me as, oh, that's where this came from. To me, they didn't stick out much, and I was kind of surprised by that, to be honest.
So what did you feel when a song came on? Like, did you feel like, oh, I'm checking out, or like?
I think I was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is definitely David Bowie. This is unmistakably David Bowie. And it's of that time we talked about. It's like right within the wheelhouse of
that's what I was going to, I mean, if you listen to his albums of that time.
Of that era of Bowie. So I was fine with him, but I was kind of like, I don't know why I feel like I've never really heard this before, or
even Magic Dance.
I don't think so. I don't know.
That surprises me, I guess.
Yeah.
I never watched the movie.
Yeah.
And I also don't know that. I mean, it was a single, but I don't remember hearing it on the radio, and I don't know where I would have come across it.
Late night TV,
maybe
after you went to bed.
Yeah,
mostly.
I have early bedtimes, so
that song was played.
Yeah, you know how they used to play the national anthem when TV
used
would
to
go
be
off
Magic
the air?
Dance.
It used to be Magic Dance.
That makes sense.
After the national anthem.
Then Magic Dance was over, and it was just the boo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I have much of a opinion of the music other than, yep, that's David Bowie.
No, but I, like we talked about at the beginning, yeah. But especially if you don't know who Bowie is.
When did you make that connection? Or
probably when I was in high school. I grew up in a pretty conservative family, so I didn't listen to like rock music, like especially from like the 80s when I was a child, like, and because, Bowie was kind of a polarizing character, especially amongst conservatives.
Yeah.
I think that's probably why I had no idea who he was. But once I figured out who he was, like from high school onward, I love him. And I will say this, there are eras of Bowie I appreciate more, but
yeah, of course.
But as a creative genius, he's one of my top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
Of all time. And also just as a personality, and they talk about his personality on this set. They said that he was so patient, so easy to work with, and that
That's
he
what
would
I hear about him. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, how many rock stars, do you hear that about, that they're actually very down to earth and polite and work well with others?
Right.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, Bowie strikes me as someone that also just loved film.
Yeah.
Like someone who would understand that, like, hey, I can't have an ego because this is all in service of the film, and I love film, and I believe in this project.
Well, and he was also, for someone who was a solo performer, he was an incredibly collaborative person as well. His whole life, if he liked someone's work, he would find a way to work with them. Obviously, there were issues, and I think it would maybe be remiss to not talk about the fact that he didn't want to kiss Jennifer Connelly, which is admirable. But there were also things about David Bowie's life that
there were
like,
rumors,
right? Yeah,
and are rumors,
that
and
like
allegations.
He did do some. He wasn't, a saint, or
perfect,
but he was hanging out.
But as far as like what we also know about his personality, he was an incredibly generous, creative person. Trent Reznor has talked about how important David Bowie was to him getting clean, and the fact that David Bowie toured with Trent Reznor. Like, I mean, you think about like. David Bowie just knew what was good work, and worked with that. I totally can see him being an asset on a movie set, and it's kind of interesting how little he's in Labyrinth.
Yeah, that really kind of struck me as well when you think about it.
Yes, as far as like his physical, but they put his face Like his face is built into the sets, and they say like 14 places they have his face. So they try to make it so he's omnipresent. Whether either he's always watching her, like he's always, and so
do you have a favorite Bowie moment in Labyrinth?
Yeah, the dance magic, but where he's talking to the goblins, he's just like, well, laugh, he's making jokes, and I just how he interacts with the goblins. They're like pets he hates, but he's so egotistical that he still needs their responses.
Right. I just love the first time he talks to Sarah, because I'm like, oh, this is so David Bowie. This is David Bowie.
I mean, he has a unique voice, which you don't really think. I mean, you hear it and you're like, oh, that's Bowie. But if you think about it, even the way he speaks is very Bowie.
And I was saying this before we started recording, but it just Jermaine Clement on the Flight of the Conchords Bowie episode where he does the 70s and 80s Bowie impression. It's like it just nails it, and that's what I hear.
That's what you hear. Yeah.
Like that first scene of him speaking to Sarah with the crystal. I'm like, he's doing a David Bowie impression.
Forget about the
baby. What about you, Nate?
I just love, and it's not really anything he says, but this is something that our listener Eric brought up, is just this shot of him. There's like a scene that's like the MC Escher stair drawing, and just how he kind of flips up over the stairs. And one of our listeners, Eric, wrote into us about that shot and just talked about how he said it has a, quote, certain spooky atmosphere, which I think is a really good way of explaining it. Like there's an eeriness to that scene, and there's something special about it being David Bowie. It's just like, he's larger than life. He's like, the laws of physics don't apply to this guy.
The whole shtick with Bowie is, because what's perfection is going to be symmetry. And Bowie with his one eye, his pupil that's dilated. Yeah. When you have like such a symmetrical everything else, and then one thing is not symmetrical,
just slightly askew.
That's what gives him kind of that. The alien look that he goes, the Starman look, and so when you throw him in a even weirder, he's perfect for that.
Right. So I mean, it was talked about in the intro, but the critics really panned this movie when it came out. What I find interesting, though, is I was just doing some like basic Google searching research. And of course, you've got a lot of pieces now of people writing about how much they love this movie. But I do want to point out that in 1986, the New York Times review by Nina Darnton, she really loved this movie. Yeah. And I wonder if there's something to be said for
it was like one of the only positive reviews.
Yeah, I'll even say, she says, quote, "It's a fabulous film about a young girl's journey into womanhood that uses futuristic technology to illuminate a mythic style tale, is in many ways a remarkable achievement." So I do wonder if there's something to be said for this being a movie that a woman critic was going to see it for what it was, more than a lot of the male critics were at the time, and that it took a couple years and probably honestly more women critics to kind of understand and respect the movie for what it was. Because even the pieces I read that were from like today, that were talking about revisiting the movie and really loving it for what it was, the two I read were, even from today, were both written by women. Is this a movie that was partially not appreciated in its time because it was a movie about a woman,
a female
protagonist? Not only that, but one who was in kind of a weird psychological way having a sexual awakening that people didn't really know what to do with that, because that's added on to this Muppet movie.
Right. So during the masquerade scene, or as her relationship with Jareth develops, men are like, this is weird. And maybe, I don't know, maybe women are like, this makes sense.
See, in my brain, I never got the vibe that, like, as a child, the thought I always thought with the ballroom scene was not she's being seduced by my thought was always she's being hypnotized.
Yeah. Well, she ate the fruit.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so she's
kind of drugged.
Yeah. She's been hypnotized. Yeah. And my thought, like, as a kid watching it, was never, this is a sexual awakening. It was the Goblin King wants to dance with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's tripping out. Like, I didn't know what that was as a kid, but like, it was never,
and when you take it as in that kind of thing, where it is kind of predatory behavior, it becomes all the more powerful that she says you don't have power over me at the end.
I guess that's the thing. In my brain, even though everything's saying that it was her sexual awakening, I never got the vibe that she was like going after Jareth. But did you guys get that? I mean, I guess my question
I think
is, how did you,
I got that.
it?
I think I got that as an adult.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that if I were watching it as a kid, like you, it would have gone right over my head.
I mean, I wrote,
don't think I would.
Is he seducing her during that scene? Because I was like, that seems wrong.
Well, yeah.
But like also a little bit counter to his stated goals.
Yeah. I also didn't think he was very successful, is my whole point.
No,
it was like
he
I didn't
wasn't.
think he was good at it because she was like, okay, this is weird.
Right.
Yeah. I did. I picked up on it, but I also picked up on the fact that she was like put off by it, but also that she was sort of like, oh, though. Like
that all kind of I appreciate that kind of wraps into this idea of Jim Henson embracing childhood darkness.
Yeah.
That maybe that is a little perverse. Let's explore it a little bit. You know, that kind of goes along with the other types of
definitely
darkness
land on one side of it, of that ambiguity, but like let's acknowledge that that's an ambiguity that exists.
Yeah.
A good thing about this though is at the end of the day, the whole thing is about her on her own power.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, that's the whole shtick.
Whether it's sexual or not, that the dangerous can be alluring.
Yeah. But she sees the danger and decides I'm in control of myself.
Yep, exactly.
I do not have to be beholden to the situation, which I think at the end of the day, especially back then, for girls that age, a lot has happened in the last 10 years as far as just the public perception of
consent and autonomy and
All right, so one last kind of question I want to ask is of the creatures, because we talked a lot about how awesome the creatures are. Do you guys have one that really sticks out in your mind as like this is sort of the creature that I love in this movie?
Yeah, well, I probably have two that I loved as a kid, but like the main one was the little worm in the hallway, the Ello. I said, "Did you say hello?" No, I said hello. That's close enough. Like, I loved that little worm. I just thought it was so weird and so.
I love her design too.
Yeah. And then I love the where there's the knights on the weird ostrich thingies, and they have the spears with the little munchy guys on top. Those little muncher guys. I just
those
thought
are awesome.
They're such a simple puppet because it's just those
like
those
a claw
lever
thing,
grabbers.
Yeah.
But they were just so cool looking as you see them running around the maze. Yeah.
Yeah. I was also thinking about the two guys that are like the door handle guys and how like metallic they made them look and just lifelike.
Yeah.
And then when she takes the kind of the handle away out of his mouth or whatever and then puts it back in.
That's all right. I'm used to it.
I love Ludo.
I was going to say Ludo's probably the one that I connected with the most, and you know,
he is cute
at that heart level. Yeah.
As a kid, I could see Didymus being a character I really like. As an adult, his mouth creeps me out a bit.
He's got one of the best bits, like Python-esque bits too, about how you have to ask permission.
Crossing the bridge.
Yeah. That's a very Python thing.
Well, can we have permission?
Yeah.
Yes.
If the farting sphincters in the bog, are characters, that's something that's so audacious you can't help but admire.
Do you think there had to be some puppeteer that had to open that sphincter?
Yeah,
like had to.
Or they just forced air through the bottom of it.
Yeah,
it was just kind of there.
I don't know the mechanics of it.
It was great.
I think I like how clever the two guys at the doors.
You mean the four, like the shield guys?
Yeah, the shield guys. I like that. I just like the cleverness of it.
All right, so I don't know if this discussion changed any of our minds on anything, or
I might put it as a 5. I might change it.
Yeah, you should.
Well, just because I guess I don't foresee this will it's permanently etched in my brain, and I figure if it's one of my top 5 movies, I should probably.
It should, yeah. So if someone came up to you and said that movie really sucks, would you really
punch him right in the nose?
Good.
Go at him
right in the Jim Bean.
Is that the nose?
It's the nose to Phil. Yep. The one that he punches when someone says they don't.
You'll
like
find
Labyrinth.
out. Yeah. Say something bad. You find out.
I won't.
I think I would keep it at 4, but this was. I mean, I like this movie a lot, and I really only have an adult experience with it. So I think
rephrase that. Try again.
Yeah, so I only have an experience watching this as an adult. I don't have that childhood nostalgia, so I think I can be sort of a witness to saying you can
even a fully grown brain.
A fully grown brain,
a fully developed brain can enjoy this.
Yeah,
unless you're Ryan.
Unless you're me.
Yeah.
No, I can see that I should have more fun with this movie than maybe I let myself. Like, I should just ride it. Just be like, okay, fine. Like, go for the ride. Like, yeah, it's fun right now. And maybe it's not so fun right now, but like, that's fine. It doesn't have to be. And yeah, maybe.
That's when you go get some popcorn.
Right. Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's still, even if you don't care about the story, visually, there's fun stuff to watch.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, there's still just this quirky thing that's like, this thing exists.
Yeah.
Like this quirky movie.
That sort of lightning in a bottle.
Yeah,
kinda,
exactly. You know,
Jim Henson's gone, folks. Like this type of, that's the thing. You're never going to get this type of movie from Brian. You're just never going to get this movie from the rest of the Henson family.
Right.
Jim really had a darkness to some of the stuff he did, even the commercials before the Muppets and stuff.
Right.
And I think that he was a rare singular person.
Yeah, and I also wonder if there's even an aspect of it where now Muppet stuff, it all kind of exists within this umbrella of Disney.
Yep.
Even the Muppet stuff that comes out now, I think it's enjoyable, but it all kind of has
definitely
it
hitting
has
on one note of Muppet. Like it's sort of like living into the idea of Muppets rather than like the history of Muppets.
It's sort of, and I don't mean this necessarily as a bad thing, but it's sort of a corporatization of the Muppets.
It is.
It's not the same thing as, that sort of unique touch that an auteur even like Jim Henson could put on it. You know, like it has to come from him, So yeah, I guess I don't think that we could have done an episode on the Labyrinth to the degrry we did without you. So
I wouldn't have let you.
No, you wouldn't have. We would have heard about it. I'll put it that way. We would have heard about it. But yeah, I just I guess we just want to thank you for coming on the podcast again and sharing with us one of your childhood favorites.
Of course, no problem. It's always fun. It's always a blast. I appreciate it when you guys ask me back time after time after time.
Just
all twice.
All 2 times.
All right. Well, Phil, thanks again. We'll have you on again sometime soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So, Ryan, why don't we talk about what we're going to be discussing in our next episode of Can We Still Be Friends?
Yeah. Well, we're bringing another guest in, and we're also doing...
This is going to be new.
A very new thing.
I keep thinking there's no way we're going to keep breaking ground, but we keep doing it.
It's not our first streaming-only release, but we've got a friend of mine from way back, and also someone who is gaining some prominence in the Bitcoin world, actually.
Okay, the cryptocurrency landscape.
It's my friend Brad Rettler, Dr. Bradley Rettler.
Okay.
He is a professor of philosophy at Wyoming, at the University of Wyoming. And he has been thinking about philosophy and Bitcoin, and he is in the process of writing a book with a couple of his philosophy friends and thinking, what is the philosophical benefit or dangers of Bitcoin? And so he's been kind of making the rounds talking about that. He's not going to be talking about Bitcoin necessarily, or
maybe
even philosophy. Who knows?
I'm going to make that my challenge.
Possible,
I'm going to see if I can kind of get that into this discussion.
And he's selected that for us to watch the movie Hamilton. Watch the.
Is it a movie
filmed,
but it's like the filmed production?
Yeah, I mean,
of Hamilton.
Yeah, as far as I recall, it was eligible for Oscars, which would have made it a movie, right?
Right.
And so, but yeah, this was released last 4th of July weekend.
Yeah, that's right. It was.
And
on Disney
Plus, they filmed the stage version with the original cast of Hamilton. Its release as a movie was not without its controversy. Yeah. It was not quite the victory lap that I think a lot of people expected it to be.
Although, I mean, I still think it a ton of people watched it.
Yeah.
And I'm in just sheer numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It still, I don't think, can be beat. But you're right. I think that the discussion changed and the conversation changed. And it even continued to change around Lin-Manuel Miranda as In the Heights is now out. And that was not without its own controversy. And so, I think it'll be great to have Brad come on.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he's someone who likes Hamilton.
That's as far as I know. I honestly don't really know.
Okay. Well, we'll find out. And maybe we should mention that, we have been fans of Hamilton. We saw it together.
Yeah. I was going to say we've seen
two movies,
and one Broadway musical together. Yeah. We saw Hamilton in Chicago together.
I mean, I think it will be interesting to even come at it as this is our history with it, sort of how our ideas have evolved around this musical.
We also just happen to have a bit more of a kind of leg up in the first viewing. Well, the first time I saw it was actually...
It was actually...
I mean, it wasn't Broadway original cast, that would be, but...
But we certainly can keep our noses held high.
Oh, and we will.
And saying,
and we
did see this on the stage.
Yeah.
And it's, and you, there's just no way you can capture it. On a streaming platform.
I mean, I don't want to tip my
hand
hand too early, but I was going to say the same thing. Being there and seeing the Chicago cast with, I want to say, the third Aaron Burr,
which was the best. Probably.
It was the one I saw.
As the one we saw was the best. For sure.
I haven't seen a better.
But you do have to see it in person.
Oh my gosh!
It's not the same.
It isn't.
Streaming platform.
It isn't.
It's great. Don't get me wrong. It's a good.
It's all you have.
Alternative. I won't say it suffices.
Right.
But it's close. No, actually, it's not even close to sufficing. But it's something. It's something you can do.
If you can't get to a taqueria for a good taco, but you can get to Taco Bell, okay.
That's Taco Bell is sort of like the Mexican food equivalent of watching Hamilton streaming on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Technically, you ate a taco.
Right.
But spiritually, in reality,
existentially, transcendentally,
you haven't tasted a taco.
Experientially, not there.
And we'll talk to Brad as a quote unquote equal. That's all
we will.
That's all we can commit to.
This is a podcast. This is a podcast
episode
of
95.
That's true. That's
episode
true.
95. If we can't,
we need to have that level of mutual respect.
Or at least act like it.
Act like we have mutual respect between those who have, like us, who have seen it in person.
In Chicago.
On the stage.
Right.
With the people around you.
Right.
With the audience. That's the thing they don't get. They'll never get that on Disney Plus. You'll never get the audience.
No.
It's a living room
If you start clapping, it sounds weird.
So I mean, that's great that people enjoy it on the streaming platform. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for those who enjoy it on the streaming platform. As long as they recognize that it's not the same.
Oh, I've had a Taco Supreme and...
Right. Sometimes you feel like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be a challenge for us. It'll be great to talk to Brad again.
Yeah.
It'll be great to
I've never talked to him.
Brad.
I've never met Brad. I'm excited to do so.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful collaboration we have between your friends, myself, and our listeners.
Some of your friends. Do you have any friends before me?
Well, I'm trying to scrounge up a few for some future episodes.
Yeah. See what you can do. I would love to meet those people.
For me, Can We Still Be Friends has always been a very, very trepidatious thing because I might be losing my only friend.
It's been a little pleading.
Can we please still be friends? Because I got no one else to podcast with.
Can I lock you into a monthly schedule?
Anyways. Yeah. So, hey, if you have somehow, and there are people out there, who somehow have missed Hamilton.
Yeah.
Up until now. Now's the time.
Yeah.
Really. It's this podcast that is the time.
This is the best time
to get into Hamilton, to try it out. It's not going to be as great as the stage. Don't get us wrong.
Oh my gosh, that was so great.
It was great. But it's going to be worth your while to get that Broadway cast recording if you don't have time to watch it. Bottom line is, join us. And once you watch it, or if you've already watched it, there's a lot of ways that you can give us some feedback on what you think of Hamilton. Let's just run down those ways. Yeah.
Can We Still Be Friends podcast there? Instagram. Can We Still Be Friends pod? Always our website. Can We Still Be Friends.net.
I'm just emphasizing it. Yeah.
You do not have to remind me that we're friends, Nate. It's a little. You're not going to lose me.
I know. but I wanted to punctuate these things.
Okay. And our email is it includes our email, our website.
Right.
So feedback@canwestillbefriends.net.
Not so good on that one.
That was all right. We also have a phone number.
Yeah. So give us a call, 847-306-9532. Yes. There it was.
I know.
And then leave a voicemail, or you can always just use that voice memo app on your phone, package that up, and send it off to us in an email. We'd love to be able to put that on the air. And we hope you're enjoying your summer. We took that little June off, which was kind of nice to get that little breather. But we'll be back in August with Hamilton. And enjoy the summer.
Yeah.
And catch you next time.